As we've been highlighting over the last few weeks, the coronavirus pandemic has hit restaurants particularly hard when you look into the data. And that's shifting the way that Americans and people around the globe really have been consuming alcohol. Specifically there, when you look at the data that we're seeing now, one major data tracking firm says that global beverage alcohol consumption is not expected to come back to what it was before for at least 5 years' time. A long time for things to return back to normal. And for more on that, we're joined by the CEO of that data analytics team, IWSR Drinks Market Analysis CEO, Mark Meek, joins us now. And Mr. Meek, I mean, when we look at this, I guess we were expecting a slowdown, but maybe not one that would take 5 years' time to get back to normal. And so how is that playing out right now across the globe?
Hey, hi, Zach. Good to speak to you, and thanks for having me on the program. So the first thing to point out is actually it's interesting to look at this upcoming downturn versus 2008. And the first key difference to point out is in 2008 for global beverage alcohol consumption, pretty much across all markets and all channels, it was very much a kind of a V-shaped downturn and then very quick upturn. So whilst we are predicting, in volume terms that it's going to take 5 years to come back pretty much across the globe, actually as things start to normalize, whether it's travel, bars and restaurants start opening, pretty much in every market we tracking, we are saying that there will be an uptick, but it won't be the V shape we saw in 2008. And it'll be more, as we sort of describing it, more a Nike-shaped type of upturn. So the right-hand side of the V, if you like, is going to take longer than we saw in 2008. There are markets as well which are going to prove a little bit more resilient than others. So actually the US, according to our predictions and forecasts, will come out relatively unscathed. And the key reason behind that is the US is relatively unique in the strength of sales and volumes that you have through your key retailers and liquor stores and e-commerce. In a lot of ways is outweighing the negative effect and the downside from all the bars and restaurants being closed.
Yeah.
So the US is quite interesting.
I mean, you don't gotta tell me about the way that we've got a lot of liquor stores around here in New York. I've definitely noticed that. But when we look into which specific alcohol, spirits, and other categories might be a little bit in better position to withstand all this, we have noted that seltzer sales continue to be robust, and that's something that you guys are also seeing. What other markets, in terms of whiskey, gins, everything else, might be able to fall in a similar camp?
Okay, so in terms of what's doing well in the US is, for example, if we talk about the US, is US whiskey, so that is doing well, and any spirits that is relevant to local markets. So whether it's Scotch here in the UK, whether it's Beiju, which is a massive spirits drink in China, any local spirits or local beers or hard seltzers actually is pretty local to the US, are doing pretty well in their local markets. Where brand owners and categories struggle is the ones that have a real international exposure. Scotch is an example. So that will go back into growth, but it's going to take a longer time. Champagne is another example. Sparkling wine, and wine in particular. So categories that have quite a big international footprint, going to take longer to come out of this downturn. And the ones that have a very strong local presence and footprint, they're going to do better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned champagne, and that might be the saddest alcohol story, sub-story to come out of this as well, because we've seen reports that global champagne sales are expected to come down by about a third because there are so few things to celebrate so far in 2020. I don't know if that'll necessarily, I pray that that'll change in 2021, but I'm not entirely sure. I mean, is it really that simple to say, yeah, champagne sales are weak because people are very sad right now?
So look, there is in certain markets there's a link between celebration and champagne, but actually in its home market it's more actually almost an everyday drink. And France is the biggest market for champagne. So look, there's a lot of gloomy forecasts, and I saw those numbers that were produced by the trade body that represents champagne. So there's some gloomy numbers out there in terms of champagne. Actually, we think it's a little less gloomy, and we think actually sparkling wine is more of a steep decline, and I'll talk to that in a second. Now, why do we think champagne, whilst will struggle in the short term, it's less gloomy, as I say, than those forecasts that you referenced to? Is the first thing to note is that actually the more than 50% of champagne sales are in the last 3 months of the year. And hopefully, we're going to be in a better position in terms of handling this virus by the time we come. I mean, if there's a second spike, all bets are off. So the numbers that they're referencing is the first sort of 5 months of the year, and that's less of 30% of champagne sales.
Got it.
So the key will be what happens in the second half of this year.
All right.
So actually, yes, not great, but less gloomy.
All right, there you go. I always enjoy ending segments on a little bit less gloomy note, but appreciate you sharing the time with us. Mark Meek, IWSR Drink Market Analysis CEO. Appreciate you chatting with us.
Thank you very much, Zach. Thank you.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.